Well, hey, internets, it's Jake from Mini Terrain Domain, and this is our fourth interlude. As you can tell up here, Interlude 4, Doc, Man of Mystery, and the fact that the one and only Doc, aka Gary, or vice versa, is next to me in the overlay. The fourth in our interlude series, taking us through January 3rd, before we return with Scribes and Scrolls on January 10th. So in just a few moments, we're going to have fun for a little bit as we see what Doc has been up to. First off, I want to just remind everybody, as I said, this is the fourth interlude, so if you've been watching with us, you kind of know how it goes. This is pre-recorded. So things like domain tomes and all of the stuff that goes with that, the donation subscriptions and all of that, are not in play in this session. However, we are actually keeping a running total of all of your subscriptions and bits and donations and all of that we appreciate immensely. When we return on January 10th, I will award the players with all of their due domain tomes. And I'll tell you, Gary, after the Vorn session, there's quite a lot of tomes that are already sitting there ready for your return. As Dwight said, it should last Cari about one session. So, so yeah, and we're probably there in the chat with you right now while this session is taking place. So, and this is probably the part where we're saying hi and things in the chat. So hello, future us. I would like to, for a quick moment, draw your attention down below me to the lower left-hand corner. You'll see our channel sponsors, Talon and Claw and Run Right Play. Their links and information will pop up from time to time during the stream in the chat. Be sure to check them out. They are some incredible creative folks, so check out their links. And of course, as always, we want to take a moment and just remind you that you matter. Your presence on this earth makes a difference whether you believe it or not. Things can be difficult. Sometimes you might be struggling for any number of reasons, and that's okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to struggle. But you shouldn't have to struggle alone without help. And that's why we've made it pretty easy for you to at least get started on looking for the help you might need, simply by typing !help in the chat. That will bring up the URL findahelpline.com. That information will show up in the chat from time to time and along the bottom of our stream here. It's a great resource for mental health services and other help services. That all you have to do is type in your where you are in the world, city, state, province, whatever it may be, country, and it will give you information for phone numbers, text numbers, websites, for any number of resources that are available in your area. So findahelpline.com. Go there, bookmark it for yourself, bookmark it for a friend, and just know that we care about you and we want to make that available to you, so that you can get the help that you need. With that, I think we're going to go ahead and play a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons. So, let's see when and where Doc is. We open on a very wide shot of Doc sitting. You are sitting all by yourself in the Hearth, the tavern in the Court of Open Air in Candlekeep. The new folks that you met earlier today, several hours ago, you've known them for less than 24 hours. You all arrived at the same time and got kind of roped into investigating the mysterious disappearance of one of the sages of Candlekeep. where you went into a interdimensional, extra dimensional space and fought a variety of things, wrestled with some things, had some, well, your companions had some food. There were cats, there were books, there were bookshelves attacking all of you. And ultimately, you emerged and found the missing sage dead in a study room. Quite the first day in Candlekeep on the 16th of Tarsak in the year of Dale Reckoning 1492. Just moments before, these new companions that you met individually left on their various things, all of them being the type of people that need sleep in order to recover for the next day, except maybe that drow elf. They didn't seem to need a whole lot of rest, as you observed during one long rest period in the mansion. But just as quickly as you all arrived for a nightcap at the hearth, they all just left you there by yourself. What are you doing?
Doc is going to be observing all of the people in the hearth, which seems to be nobody. And he's going to look at the bartender and he's going to say, "Is it always this quiet at this time?"
Yeah. Gets to be this late. People gotta sleep. I like to keep the fire burning and keep things going just in case somebody needs to use the study rooms, as he indicates the many doors that are around the perimeter of the interior of this building, each of them leading to different inner or extra dimensional meeting rooms and conference rooms and such. You never know when somebody needs a late night bit of inspiration in the form of alcohol or coffee or a little bit of food, what have you. You're welcome to stay as long as you like.
Doc is gonna sort of look around. He's gonna look at the bartender and say, "Well, other than us, is anybody else awake now?"
You might find a few people prowling around in the court of air. Oh, the armorer there over at the stables tends to keep late hours, and over in the pillars of pedagogy, people tend to stay up pretty late. Though you got to watch out for those modrons. Those little, they look like metal eyeballs with spindly little arms and legs, usually carrying a book or two. That's what they do, but they can tend to not really be aware where they are, so it might get underfoot. Keep an eye out for them.
Keep an eye out, but wouldn't that hurt?
I'm not sure I get your meaning.
Well, but if I took my eye out,
oh
it
dear,
would hurt.
By the gods, why would you take your eye out?
You said keep your eye out. How else would you do that if it wasn't taken out to begin with?
I see.
Well, so you'd have a harder time seeing if you took your eye out.
It's a figure of speech, friend. Keep an eye out means to keep your eye looking out, observing. Don't literally take your eye out. That's very unsettling. Unless you can do that. You can't take your eyes out, can you?
Doc is gonna start poking at his face.
Oh, please don't do that. Please, no.
But then why'd you ask?
I I don't know, honestly. I really don't know. Look, can I get you anything to eat or drink?
Oh no, that sounds terrible.
All right, a simple no is fine. You don't have to insult my food and beverage.
Oh, it's not your food or beverage. Food and beverage is just generally revolting.
You don't like food or drink.
No, I don't see the need of it.
All right, if you say so. It's he kind of makes a point of looking away from you, and he's like, "Oh, I asked these folks. I don't know what magic. Why do you keep asking them? Why do you keep asking?" Sorry,
Doc
didn't mean to pry.
Doc is going to stand up and he's going to start um, walking for the door, and he's going to turn around. Wait, I have a question.
Well, I might have an answer for you.
Are you having trouble hearing me, or am I not speaking clearly?
I can hear you just fine. Why do you ask?
Oh, because you said, if you say so. So I assumed you had a have a hard time hearing me, because otherwise you wouldn't say if you say so, because you would have clearly heard me say so, right?
If you say yes, yes,
Yes, yes.
yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for the very pleasant conversation. Um, keep your eyes out or in. Wait, what is this supposed to be?
The expression is keep an eye out, or some people say keep your eyes. You know what? It's keep your eye out. Just leave it at that. That's the expression, not literally. I'll see
Doc
you
is
around.
gonna turn around and he's gonna walk toward the door and he's gonna open it. And as he's walking out, he says, "Aren't you always keeping your eyes out? If you're always looking, I mean, unless your eyes are closed or you're sleeping." But I don't understand. And he's gonna close the door behind him.
And you step out into the court of open air. You are in the wide open space of this large courtyard that you'd come into just that morning when you were entered in through the gates, which are to your sort of at an angle off to your right. Immediately next door is the House of Rest, where many of your companions had headed over to. And you have a room that was, or you were told you have a room that was reserved for you there. Immediately in front of you, when you walk out, next to this, the hearth, is this large building that has a lot of glass windows. Almost looks like a greenhouse, but it was described to you as the House of the Binder, the only place where you can have books made and things like that. Beyond that, you can see a faint glow on the far side of the courtyard, coming from a large glowing green emerald door. And then directly straight across from the courtyard from you is the Pillars of Pedagogy, where you had gone to investigate the disappearance of Matthias. There is a temple, a granary, and the stables also all along the wall to your right, leading towards the gate.
Doc is going to walk over to the glowing green door.
Okay. Yeah, as you head towards this door, you the closer you get, you see that there is a set of marble stairs that lead up towards this door. The door itself, um, is 15 feet tall, and it's this sort of translucent dark green stone that is just emanating with this glow that seems to come from within. You see on either side of the door, carved in marble, are figures. There's a man on one side, a woman on the other. They are robed figures, each holding a book with the symbol of Candlekeep carved into its cover. And they are perpetually looking at whatever these books are. Immediately on each side, between these relief sculptures and the door, is an intricate carving of scroll work with eyes all in it. They look to be glass orbs that look like eyes, with a singular eye of Ogma up above the door lintel. And standing next to this door, with a lectern, just a simple lectern kind of on this raised stairway, is a individual in dressed all in purple robes and vestments, and they have a book open on the lectern in front of them. They are just standing there as you approach.
Hello.
The individual does not say anything to you.
I said hello.
They hold a single finger up towards you while still looking through their book. And then they go with their other hand and slowly turn the page. They take a ribbon and fold it across, bring it down into the page, and carefully close the book. Straighten it. Hello. What can I do for you?
I have a question.
Well, I asked you what I could do for you. The implication is that this would be an invitation for you to speak.
Oh, because it's very possible you could do a lot of things for me.
Is there anything in particular you would ask of me?
Yes. Why are you here?
I am a keeper. I am a keeper of the Emerald Door. It is my job to ensure that no one enters through this door unless they have been granted entry into the inner sanctum of the Great Library.
Oh, that sounds nice. Has anyone tried to go in today?
A few individuals have been granted access into the inner sanctum. Are you seeking entry yourself?
Yes.
Very well. He holds out his hand. Your letter. You do have a signed and sealed letter of consent granting you access, yes? What is this?
It is a letter.
What is written on this piece of paper?
It says, "Please let Doc inside the emerald green door." Signed, Doc.
Make a persuasion check.
Uh, 16.
That's weird. I forgot to grab my dice. My talon and claw dice vault. Aromatic cedar. I have to inhale it every time I open it. So, pardon that display. As where go. I'm going to assume that this is your attempt at a joke. A bit of levity to lighten the mood on so late at night. Because if this were in fact an attempt to forge a letter from the Keeper of Tomes, you would be indefinitely barred entry to the inner sanctum. So I can therefore only assume this was intended in jest.
Well, no, I don't know how to make jokes, but I clearly didn't forge a letter from anyone. I said, "Please let Doc in," and I signed it, Doc. Didn't use anybody else's signature. I just wrote it on the paper. In fact, you watched me.
Yes. Yes, I see the problem here. In order to gain entry into the inner sanctum, the Keeper of Tomes, the highest ranking individual at the Great Library, must grant you permission via a signed and sealed letter that must be hand-delivered to myself or one of the other keepers of the Emerald Door. Only such a letter will give you access into the inner sanctum for a period of a 10-day. That is why I assumed you were making jests.
You know what they say about assumptions.
Well, let's find out if he knows what they say about assumptions. No, I don't know what they say about assumptions. What do they say?
I don't know. I hoped you would.
Unless you have official business at the Emerald Door, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave me to my reading. And they carefully open up the book, pull the ribbon out of the way, and look at you very pointedly. If you'll excuse me.
So,
and they go back into reading.
would you like me to excuse you?
You make a perception check.
1.
You stand there for a moment as they continue to very diligently ignore the fact that you are even there. When you hear a clearing of a throat immediately at your left shoulder.
Hello.
You turn to see that there is an individual who is as tall as you are. In the green light of the emerald door, their skin seems to grab the light and reflect it off from many metallic surfaces as you are looking into the face of a bronze dragonborn who is also wearing a sort of vestment or robe. Though after a moment you realize it's not as official looking as what the keeper of the Emerald Door is wearing. This appears to be a bathrobe.
Hello.
Yes. Hello.
Why are you here?
I am out on my evening stroll. I couldn't help but notice that you were... Well, the keeper of the Emerald Door does not like to be disturbed in the evening. I thought it best that I would come here and attempt to rescue you from his stern gaze.
And he kind of looks over, and you see that the keeper is now looking over top of their glasses at you both with a very unamused expression on their face.
Doc is going to look back at the keeper, but he isn't wearing glasses, so he's going to do this.
The keeper of the Emerald Door goes and quickly tries to recompose themselves, but as they are looking at their book, they are now... You hear next to you, the Dragonborn just starts...
I like you, son. Come, walk with me.
Okay. And Doc will proceed to walk with him.
What is your name, son?
I don't have one.
Intriguing. You have not been given a name, or you've lost it, you've misplaced it, or perhaps it was stolen from you.
Yes.
Interesting. You know, there is a tale of a sea witch that stole the voice from a young merfolk. It is often considered a children's story, but I find that these stories, often intended for children, have grains of truth in them and can serve sort of allegories for our own day-to-day existence. I do hope that perhaps one day you can find your name, if it is in fact lost, or perhaps it will be returned to you. In the meantime, allow me to present my own name. I am Elchrist.
Hello. It's nice to meet you, Elchrist. At least I think it is, so far.
It's wonderful to meet you. I often walk the grounds of Candlekeep until sleep finds me. I find it difficult some nights to get to sleep. So much is running around in my mind these days. It helps to come out into the open air here, to quiet the noise. Yes, you appear to have a question.
Yes, I find something you said curious.
And what would that be?
You said that you come to the court of open air and walk around in the hopes that sleep will find you. But if you stayed in one place, wouldn't that be easier to make you be found? It's almost like you're avoiding it without even realizing.
Truly, you are a very astute individual. You have caught me in my ruse, as it were. I am, in fact, avoiding sleep.
Oh, and why is that?
Well, I've been around for a number of years. I have seen many things that would trouble the most complex of minds, and I find that in the quiet hours of the early night, that all of these memories and thoughts and experiences rush to the forefront, vying for my attention. And, well, as I lay there attempting to sleep, I am plagued by all of these things and forced to think on them once again. I prefer not to some nights. And so, as you have observed, I avoid sleep altogether and take to walking around. But you are wrong on one account. It is not just the courts of open air, but the entirety of the library. Would you like to see something?
Generally speaking, okay.
Would you like to see something that not many get to see?
Yes.
How long have you been here at Candlekeep?
There are two answers to that question. The first answer is roughly 16 hours or so. I got here in the afternoon, coming in on the line when I gave my documentation to the folks at the door. But technically, we spent many hours outside of Candlekeep in a mysterious mansion. So I don't know if that counts. So roughly maybe 6 hours, depending on how you count it.
Ah, yes, well, distinguishing these sorts of things when extra-dimensional spaces and planar travel and such are involved is very important. You are very wise to make that distinction. Am I to take that to mean you were involved in this whole Matreus affair?
Yes.
Curious. Tragedy, to be sure. But I'm told that in the morning there will be wonderful memorial service. And no doubt an inquisition into his death, in which you will most certainly be questioned. But no need to trouble yourself.
As you've been walking he's been sort of leading you generally away from the Emerald Door, towards the right of the Emerald Door, towards where the Erudite Outfitter and Clothiers are in the corner. And there's two buildings that are located there. And at this point, he's sort of leading you between these two buildings, where there is set into a sort of curved wall of one of the pillars of pedagogy. There is just a standard size wooden door with iron banding on it. He walks up to it and reaches into his pocket of his robes and begins fumbling around.
Oh, it's in one of these. Oh, yeah, it is.
And he pulls out a ring of keys, puts it in the door, and turns the lock, opens up the door.
After you, son.
And holds the door open for you.
Okay. And Doc will take a step inward.
A moment later, the door closes behind you, and you find yourself in a space not at all too dissimilar from when you went looking for the study room, where Irony the Tiefling brought you to the study room where you ultimately went into the extra-dimensional space. But he leads you around to the left, around the curving hallways, and to a narrow stairway that begins leading upward around this tower. And as you walk up these stairs, you hear him kind of muttering and just he seems to it's not super easy from the sounds he's making, but he moves at a slow and steady pace. And eventually you gather that this upward walk around the stairs has brought you on a full 360 degrees around to a new level. And he opens up the door that is up at the top of the stairs. And again says,
after you.
And you can already see moonlight spilling out into an outdoor area. This seems to lead outside.
Okay. And Doc will step through the door.
You step through the door and find yourself on an upper stone walkway that is probably about 60 feet above the surface, the ground level. And you are looking out over the inner sanctum of the inner ward of the Great Library. You can see there are towers and pillars and parapets, rooftops, some buildings that are done in incredible workmanship, some that are just these massive soaring stone buildings that are incredible dark woods and buttresses. You see some of these buildings are hundreds, as high as 100 feet in the air. Some are smaller buildings that look just like ordinary stone buildings and structures. Immediately to your right, you see a whole series of ruined walls and towers, broken masonry, about 50, 60 feet in front of you, in front of a very large building. You see what looks like several glass domes or spheres with gilded discs around them, and you can see light glowing from within. There's the tallest building in the middle that has this this really tall tower, at which at the top of there is a brilliant beacon of light. You can see what almost looks like a giant, like gargantuan red dragon clinging to the side of this building. But you notice that along the length of the dragon's body, there are what look like at first just holes in the dragon. And you realize as you see a candlelight moving from within past one of these, you see an individual walking through the interior of this dragon, passing by the windows. This dragon, it seems to somehow be a part of this building. There are dozens and dozens of buildings you can see, but so much more that you can't even see the detail of from where you're standing. Looking off to your left, you even see from this massive tower, from underneath one portion of it, you see a full-blown 30-foot wide river flowing out from underneath and spilling down over rocks and continuing to lead away, presumably towards the ocean, in a series of waterfalls. You are standing above the wall, and this bridge leads into the inner ward.
Why did you want to show me this?
I had assumed this would be something. Not a lot of people get to see this, and I thought I would share it with you.
That's very kind. Is there any particular reason?
Well, I find when attempting to evade one's foe, sleep in this case, it is best to do so in the company of allies. And he begins shuffling forward along this bridge, walking further into the inner sanctum. Do you follow him?
Yes.
And he begins walking along to the end. After probably about 70, 80 feet, there is this bridge sort of turns into a ramp that just sort of spirals downward. And it's fairly quiet inside here, but there are a handful of people that are walking around. You do even see some people that are in red robes, similar to what Irony was wearing, moving around on these glowing, floating magical discs, with a couple of them are just piled high with books, as they are moving between buildings and flitting about. And he just begins to lead you along, seemingly randomly will just suddenly turn and walk down another walkway. At this point, most of the buildings, there's just random towers and spires and things that are just rising above you, in this huge concentration of stone and tile and wood and just a mishmash of architectural styles. And he's quite quiet for at least 15 or 20 minutes. Do you feel that silence at all?
No. Doc will just walk, casually observing, but not really paying attention to what they're walking past.
After about 15 or 20 minutes, you emerge. You come around the corner of a building into where is it? You come around the corner of the building, and you find yourself. You kind of go through this stone archway, and you are suddenly. It's almost, if it wasn't for the giant beacon of light at the top of this 100-foot tower on this big building immediately next to you, you could almost forget you were in the midst of this great library as you are suddenly walking along a winding path with tall trees all around you. There are glowing lights that seem to just move around and flit about. And there's this moment where one just kind of past you, and then another one sort of stops in front of you, and you see about this big, a little tiny humanoid with wings holding a glowing blue lantern. They just sort of hover in front of you for a moment and then zip away, as this whole area seems to be illuminated by fairies with lanterns, literal fairy lanterns. And then the path eventually leads to a covered wooden bridge that is over a river that runs under this bridge and then spills over an opening in the wall and down the cliffs where you are looking out over the ocean that this peninsula rests in. And it's here that this individual stops, Elchrist, and just sort of rests his hands on the railing and is looking out over the water, and just seems to take a moment to he seems very contemplative as he's looking out over everything.
Tell me, do you ever take a moment, wherever you are, and wonder how it is that you wound up in this exact place, at this exact time? What curious circumstances of your life's events have culminated in this very moment, you being here in this place?
No, I can't say that I have. I can't say that I have because sometimes journeys are a straight line, and sometimes they're a winding line, and sometimes they're a broken line. But in the end, hopefully, you always get where you're going. And sometimes it's hard or painful to look backward.
Yes, that is very true.
Do you look back at the lines behind you and wonder how or why you came to be here?
Every single day. At this point in my life, there is much more road behind me than in front of me. And more I find myself looking back over the paths and roads I have taken. And that, I know, is why I find myself here with you in this very moment, avoiding sleep. What is it that brings you here to Candlekeep, if I may be so bold as to ask?
Well, the simple truth is, I had nowhere else to be.
And so you found yourself at the great library.
Well, I realized that I had to bring a piece of art here. And so I brought the piece of art here. And when they said that providing the piece of art would get me access to the library for a 10-day, and didn't I want that? I realized that I did not want that. And so I entered the library. And now here we are.
Piece of art.
Yes.
Interesting. It is usually at the gate to Candlekeep that they are looking for unique works, almost exclusively of a written nature. It is very rare indeed that artwork would be accepted within the library. There are museums and galleries for that sort of thing, and from time to time we acquire pieces for display within the various halls of learning and such, but would you mind telling me about this piece of art?
Yes. Well, it wasn't so much of it was a piece of art, but there was writing on it. And I was very studious in looking at the rules and regulations of what the monks of Candlekeep would and could accept. And there isn't a minimum letter count in the amount of words in works that are applicable for entry into Candlekeep. If you wanted to ensure that you only received works of a written nature, you should certainly tighten up those guidelines.
Well, you appear to have done your homework, and I assure you did not mean in any way to imply that you were stretching or even breaking rules. I just found it curious, is all.
Oh, well, the drawing, it was a picture of it said DADY on it, and there was a large stick figure and a small stick figure, and two of the lines were crossed between the two stick figures.
Curious.
Is it?
It is. What was the origin of this, if I may ask? Where did you come into possession of such a piece?
I can't say.
Fair enough. Well, my friend with the lost name, do you like games?
I can't say that I've ever played a game. So what I can say is I don't dislike games.
That will do.
And he turns and continues walking along the rest of the covered bridge, and he follows the pathway, and there's a section of the path that seems to lead right up to the wall, a section of wall that leads up to a higher part of where this tall towered building is. And he stares at the wall for a moment, and he's kind of mumbling to himself, and he looks over his shoulder, and he says something in another language that, strangely, especially from this tall, gruff-looking dragonborn, you hear what almost sounds like chimes come out of his mouth. Very airy syllables, and three of these fairies with these lanterns fly over in front, and they begin illuminating the wall in front of him, and he goes,
"Ah, yes. My old eyes are struggling to see so well in the dark. It is here."
And he begins reaching out, and with a talon, he traces markings in some of the stonework. And as he does so, there's some faint blue arcane symbols that appear. and for a moment they just glow, and it's just this line of these sigils, and then they fade. And he looks at the fairies flitting about, and he goes, "All right, enough with you, be gone." And they fly away. And this time he says, "Follow me." And he steps right through the wall.
Okay, Doc will step through the wall as well.
You step through the wall, and you find yourself in a very narrow space. It's maybe 4 feet wide at its widest. It's tall, but there's stone on either side of you. And he begins leading you along. Every once in a while, there'll be a curve, and you'll angle off this way. And then suddenly there's a 90-degree turn, and you head off this way. And after about 5 minutes, you get to an area where there's a little bit of dampness in here, and you can hear this sound just outside the other side of the stone, this sort of this constant sound, but it's real faint. And there's this drip, drip, drip of the water in the area. And then you pass beyond this and continue walking along. And the sound fades off behind you. He leads you to an area where there's an intersection and a pathway that leads deeper into these dark hallways, and a narrow spiral staircase leads upward, and he begins that shuffling walk up these stairs. Gets to a point, and he reaches up, and he kind of makes a motion, and then you just see this circle of light just appear, like a moon suddenly moving through all of its phases to full. And he finishes climbing the stairs, and as you follow, you emerge in another, this time there's no trees around, there's some grass areas, some paths, and there is next to you a statue of some kind of, it's pretty weather worn because it sits here on the coast, but it appears to be vaguely humanoid, holding some kind of a pole arm. And as you emerge, he kind of touches a part of the statue, and it goes to cover this opening. And in this area with all these walkways, and there's some very nicely manicured lawn, you see a little ways behind you is this massive waterfall that you had seen from a distance before. And you can surmise that you must have moments ago walked under that through the interior of these walls. But you hear some laughter and some commotion, and you hear this sort of clacking sound every once in a while as you walk along the path and find on a section of lawn there is an assortment of mostly elderly individuals, a couple of elves, half-elves, humans, halflings. Elchrist is the only dragonborn. All of them in bathrobes, and all of them are playing some kind of game where they throw a lightly glowing small ball about 2 inches in diameter across the yard, and then they take turns trying to bowl these balls as close to this as possible. And the commotion you hear is some light jesting and minor trash talk as they're trying to throw each other off their game. But basically, you've just stumbled onto the cast of Cocoon playing bocce ball.
Oh, well, this is different.
You see, I'm not the only one who evades sleep.
So what do we do?
He leads you over to a far side, and he there's a couple other individuals over there, one of which is an older well, they're all older, but a human woman who he introduced to you as, this is Daral Yashende. This is Feminor Scrivenbach, indicating a halfling man. And this is Kazrin Nyantani, a human woman. And they kind of exchange greetings amongst themselves. They all acknowledge you. And he says, let's play a game. And he hands you the small glowing ball and says, throw this out into the lawn, but not too far. See about how far everyone else is throwing it. Throw it out there, and then we will take turns trying to get our balls as close as possible to that ball. Right, yes, well, the first part, the release, is important, but as he bends down and picks it up, you want to give it a bit of a toss. You want it to go, about 30, 40 feet away. Here, try it again. The others that were introduced to you all kind of look over at Elchrist. They don't say anything, and they kind of look at you. And the one introduced to you as Feminor Scrivenbark, the halfling, comes up and says, I can see that you are new to this game, yes? You've never played this before?
No.
Well, perhaps a demonstration, yes? You want to take this ball here and throw it like so. And he gives it a bit of a wind-up and pitches it underhand, and it rolls about 30 feet away. Then you take one of these balls, and you want to roll it as close as possible to that ball. Here, give it a try. And he hands you this larger wooden ball.
Okay. Doc will chuck it down the laneway.
All right, go ahead and make a ranged dexterity roll.
10.
Okay. The ball rolls decently, but ends up rolling a little bit short by a couple feet. Then they start taking in turns for a little bit and kind of showing you how to do this game as for a little while with them, unless you decide you don't want to play any longer. You basically play a game of bocce ball with these individuals. There comes a point where it's not terribly long after this where Elchrist and a couple of the others are they walk over to a bench.
Well, if you don't mind, I need to sit down. My bones need a bit of rest. Please, have a seat. Or stand if you prefer.
Doc will stand and he'll say, okay.
The gray-haired human woman, she has her hair sort of pulled up into this loose bun, and she's about 5'5", wearing a very almost too large for her frame, this sort of flannel robe. As she pulls out a little flask, and out of another pocket, she pulls out a little metal teacup, and she pours a little bit into this teacup, and begins to sip, and then, oh, where are my manners? Would you like some?
Oh, no.
It is not to everyone's liking. As she begins to sip. So, Alquist tells me that you seem to have misplaced your name.
Yes.
Is that what brings you here to Candlekeep? Are you in search of your name?
No, I came to Candlekeep to deliver the document, and then I remained because I had nowhere else to be. And it seemed prudent at the time to take advantage to the limited opportunity that was provided to me for a 10-day in the library, though I had no plans once I arrived, as I wasn't expecting to be here at all.
Curious. So, you've come to the library for the express purpose of delivering the very thing that gives you access to the library.
Yes.
Very curious indeed. Usually individuals come here looking for something.
Not that I can think of.
There's no particular histories or art or literature, music perhaps, folklore, tales of adventure, military strategies, spells, any of these number of things, none of which are here that you are in search of?
It all sounds very nice, but I have no particular interest in any of those things at this time. Maybe one day.
Kazrin, the older human man, comes over.
So, if I understand you correctly, you are here for no true purpose other than to be here.
Yes.
Delgrist tells me you brought a piece of art.
Well, technically, yes, but it was also a written document. As I mentioned previously, your regulations regarding the types of documents you are accept are not expressly spelled out.
So did you bring that delightful piece done in wax crayon?
Yes.
That was you. I had opportunity to review this piece earlier today. So you are one of Telesavoste's explorers.
Yes.
Investigators, I guess, would be a more appropriate word.
Yes, that word is also appropriate.
I must tell you, that piece of artwork was very intriguing. Do you understand the significance of what you brought here to the library?
It was explained to me, sort of. What is the significance? Perhaps you can share.
Well, I was hoping you could enlighten us, perhaps save us a bit of research. What I found most curious about the piece was the inclusion of... Well, it seemed that virtually every line that made up the drawing contained in the spaces where the wax crayon went over the rough surface of the paper. Sigils formed entire phrases. It would seem as though this single piece of, and you'll forgive me for saying so, but what appears to be a child's drawing, contains more information in it than some of the great tomes that I have perused in my time here.
Yes, the friendly monk who met me at the front of the library told me that there was something special about the drawing.
Well, I feel very confident that there are others that will want to speak to you about this, myself included, at a later time, of course. We do have the memorial service in the morning, and I'm told Teera Vorste wishes to speak with you and your friends, I guess, about additional work.
Yes, that's what he said. And we have to go to the memorial tomorrow, of course, because that's what people do.
That is what people do, yes. I'm sorry to hear of Matreus' passing. Well, she kind of stares thoughtfully out for a moment. She pours what appears to be the last little bits of this flask into this teacup, only filling half of her teacup, and then seems to, finishes off the last of what's in there, puts both items back into her robe, and says, well, it appears as though my nightcap has concluded and I must see myself off to my chambers. It was interesting making your acquaintance. I don't even know what to call you. You say you have no name, but how do people address you?
Well, this shirt says doctor, so some people have been calling me Doc for short, even though that's a very strange name.
Doc. I have often heard this as an affectation and shortening of the formal doctor. Sometimes it indicates a familiarity and a comfort level. There's a bit of a psychology and reasoning behind it, where people don't want to think about the implications of speaking with a doctor. And perhaps it makes them feel better, but, well, at the very least, it seems as though in lieu of a name, you have yourself a nickname. Doc.
Yes, I suppose that's an accurate statement. It's as good of a nomenclature as any.
Well, Doc, it was delightful speaking with you. I hope to speak with you soon. In particular about this piece of artwork that you've brought here to Candlekeep, and I dare say that Janosi will want to meet with you at some point.
Okay, if you say so, I'm happy to meet anybody who wants to meet me. Meeting new people is a rewarding experience, and oftentimes it's fun. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's dangerous, and people want to eat you or poison you, and you just have to say firmly, no, that's not nice. That's not how you should behave with new people.
It is good you understand your boundaries. Well, she looks around, and you can see already that some of the others have left, and Elchrist is standing there as she and the others begin to head away, and he just says, well, Doc, it was delightful walking with you, and playing a game with you. I would... Perhaps we can do it again sometime, but for now I must lead you back to the Court of Open Air. Come.
Yes, okay, perhaps one day we shall play again. It's hard to say no. It's hard to say yes, because in the end, no one can see the future. The future hasn't happened yet.
Make a perception check or an insight check, your choice.
2.
You don't notice this look, but as you say this, the Elchrist and Dural exchange looks with sort of knowing looks with one another as you say this about not knowing the future. And Elchrist begins to lead you down a pathway, and again you seem to be meandering for a little ways before you find yourself back inside. You pass through a doorway and you end up inside another area. This is quite dark in here. There's very faint light. You're not really sure where it's emanating from. As Elchrist turns around after the door closes behind you and he says, "Oh, well, that is interesting. Where did it go?" Huh. He seems quite confused as he's fumbling around. Ah, well, I appear to have lost the door.
That seems like something that could happen.
More often than you would expect. Less infrequent than I would like. Every once in a while, doors go missing, and you'll find yourself not in where you thought you were. I think if we wait around a bit, perhaps the door will return.
I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
As you say that, this glow, this dim light seems to grow slightly brighter. And you hear this voice seems to emanate from all around as you hear,
"One should never wonder at what the worst is that can happen, or else it may happen indeed."
Okay.
As you say okay, the light grows brighter around you, and you see that this space you're in is, it's almost as if somebody took one of the pillars of pedagogy and just forgot to put the interior or any doors or windows. You're in a large cylindrical room about 100 feet in diameter, and you can see up as far as this light seems to extend. It seems to be growing brighter and brighter, emanating from the floor, as you see something very bright begin to rise out of the floor. And after a moment, a very large, translucent, glowing dragon emerges out of the floor to fill much of the space in front of you. Next to you, Elchrist says,
"Oh dear. Whatever you do, try not to offend her."
Do people try to offend other people?
No, and that's just the thing. Sometimes you can inadvertently offend someone.
But shouldn't I just not offend her as opposed to try
That's
not to
what I'm
offend her?
saying to you, son.
Oh, you're saying
Do not
do not
offend her.
offend her. Well, to be fair, you first said try not to offend her, and that's very confusing because if you didn't want me to offend her, you should have just said so. It would have been easier to say it out loud, and then you wouldn't have had this conversation, right?
you hear this deep, at first it's sort of a rumbly sound coming from all around you as you hear this. And you see this spectral dragon, its mouth open wide, and you see all of these teeth, and the sound is coming from it. It seems to be, or her, she seems to be laughing. chuckling, as it were.
Hello.
Always worrying about protocols, Alchrist. Who are you?
As the glowing head lowers, filling your vision, this glowing giant dragon's head.
Well, some people call me Doc, but as to the question of who I am, that's a very complicated one. Who is anyone? Really?
Make a wisdom saving throw.
15.
All right. What? First off, what are the, beyond what you're saying, what are the initial surface thoughts that you're not saying? Basically, this spectral dragon has successfully cast detect thoughts on you.
Doc doesn't really think about things in that way. His mind is sort of blank. He reacts. He doesn't really plan at this point. So he's probably just thinking about the path that they walked to get here. And the thought of trying to escape that which you are seeking.
What would Doc's emotional state be described as?
Neutral.
Neutral.
Passive.
After a moment, as this spectral dragon is staring at you, what does it feel like when you realize that this dragon is probing into your mind?
What does it feel like?
Yeah, how would Doc interpret this and possibly even voice it as you realize the dragon is magically trying to read your mind?
Excuse me? Dragon?
She continues to cock her head slightly, and she looks at you and says,
Mirim.
Miriam, why are you investigating my thoughts? That's impolite, or at least that's what I've been told. People generally like to keep their thoughts to themselves, especially when it's their private innermost thoughts that they're not willing to share with other people. I don't tend to have private thoughts. I tend to say what I think and think what I say. Wait, is that what I do?
Your mind is surprisingly empty.
Why does that surprise you?
I have read every book and every scroll in this great library, and when I grew tired of perusing their pages, I read every scribe and seeker within this great library. All who come and go, I read them. None have been so quiet and so simple as your mind.
Sometimes the best complexity is the simpleness of a thing. Ultimately, that's what we have to see.
What are you hiding?
Well, I am have all my clothes on, so I'm hiding that. That's all.
When I look into your mind, I see what you are about to say as you say it. I don't see contemplation. I don't see worry. I don't see consternation. I don't see fear. I don't see hope or joy or love. I don't see anything but shadows.
Well, if that's the case, there must be light in there somewhere because shadow cannot exist in the absence of light. Maybe you just didn't look hard enough.
Make a straight up charisma check.
Okay. Only 11.
The giant head leans in closer towards you and says,
You are playing a dangerous game.
Well, I played a game this afternoon, but I don't think it's the one you're talking about. It was about balls. Balls everywhere.
you see this massive head sort of cock its head to one side.
I don't know why, but you amuse me. You intrigue me, and you amuse me. Alchrist, I hope to see more of this one. If you
Oh.
grow tired of your explorations, the great libraries and stacks on the surface, find any stairwell, begin climbing down. When you've climbed as far as you can go, look for more ways down. There you will find me.
Perhaps I can tell you all about our explorations. Very interesting things have happened. We found a mansion in an extra dimensional space. It was almost like it was trapped inside a book, and there was a mimic that was a chair, and there was a whole bunch of things that were very curious. I think maybe intellectually discerning palate such as yours would appreciate such news from the outside world, especially if you're here in the basement.
The spectral dragon looks at you, always seeming to cock her head as if trying to understand you. You feel the grip of the detect thought spell leave your mind as she stops probing into your mind.
I look forward to seeing you again.
And then
Yes.
she turns her attention to Elchrist.
You are up well past your bedtime. I think it's time to let our friend go.
Yes, of course. And as he says that, you hear And Alcris is no longer standing next to you. The glow in this chamber begins to recede as you watch the spectral form of this dragon sort of almost melt into the floor until the very last thing is like a crocodile sinking below the surface. You just see her snout and her eyes, and then she dips below, and you are plunged into darkness. What would you do?
Hello?
You hear your own voice echoing in this space.
Yeah, Doc is gonna try and fumble his way up the stairs. He's going to cast fairy fire on himself.
Interesting.
And he's going to cast fairy fire on himself. He has no other way to illuminate the room. And he's going to look for the stairs up.
As you cast this spell on yourself, outlining yourself in this, basically creating this almost violet shell of light around yourself, there is a dim bit of light that spreads out and does illuminate the space around you. The first thing you notice is you are no longer in this very large space. You are in a hallway, and you can go to the left or to the right.
Left.
As you begin walking along this hallway, you walk for a good 10 minutes. How long does How long does fairy fire last? Is it 10 minutes or an hour? I can't remember.
Concentration up to a minute.
Okay, a minute. So we'll say that it's about a minute that you're walking in this darkness before your spell, it just sort of and goes away. But when it does so, you're not in complete darkness. There is a very dim blue light coming from up ahead. And it gets ever so slightly brighter as you continue walking toward it. And after another couple more minutes, the light seems to glow less so to grow brighter initially than it seems that you're just growing accustomed to this very low level of darkness. Kind of like when, if you have street lights or moonlight coming in through your room at night, eventually your eyes kind of adjust to that. And you come out of this hallway into this circular room that's about 30 feet in diameter. And the room looks like it's being illuminated by moonlight, though you don't see any windows or open air or anything through which moonlight could come. But you do see that there are what appear to be several, at first glance, it looks like several doorways at even intervals around this space on the wall. As you move into this room?
Yes.
Get a better look. Okay. As you walk in the very center of the room, the floor, there's suddenly this blue flame emerges. Not violently, it doesn't just suddenly erupt. It just seems to and enhances this illumination around you, and you see this flame reflected multiple times as these what appear to be doorways are actually mirrors. And in this light, you can see in the spaces between the mirrors, all of the walls are carved in these intricate I can't think of the word, fresco, I guess that might be the word I want. As you're looking around, you see that there are it appears to be a bunch of animals, that where you see a wolf leaping in one direction, you see in the opposite direction, sort of almost forming a pattern to it, you see a jackal. You see several around these, almost like a double helix. What looks like one part of the helix is just a trail of rats following one another, while the other part of the helix is moving in the opposite direction, and it's just rats all the way around. You see above that what looks like carvings of ravens. You see in larger spaces carvings of bears. In similar fashion to the rats, you realize as you look at it, there are bats flying in the opposite direction in these carvings. Running along the floor level are what appear to be several carved boar. And then behind the boar, where the boars in the carvings appear to be moving through tall grass, you see, as if looking at it straight on, everywhere there's a couple of boars between these mirrors are carvings of what looks like a tiger hiding in the grass. And you see at each of these mirrors that light of this blue flame is reflected in it, and occasionally you catch the reflection from another mirror. So there, it almost looks like there's these infinite pathways through these mirrors. What do you do?
Doc is going to think for a moment, and then he's going to say, hello?
As you say hello, you hear a sound from one of these mirrors off to your left. And you hear a girl's voice say, "It'll be all right, I promise. It's going to be all right." And from that mirror, you see illumination of almost brilliantly bright in this space compared to the relative darkness. For a moment, you see a snowy landscape, what appears to be snowy woods, and you hear the sound of horses' hooves just moving slowly, and you're seeing as if you were slightly above and behind this horse moving through this snowy terrain, and you see a young girl on horseback with a young boy, even younger, in front of her. They're cold, they're dirty, and disheveled looking, and the girl is just kind of holding with one arm around the boy and just keeps, almost as if saying it more to herself than for the boy. She just keeps saying, "To be all right. It'll be okay, I promise." And then she looks over her shoulder and seems to look right at you. Do you do or say anything?
It'll be okay. Just keep riding.
As you say this, you see the view becomes partially obscured as what looks like thick black smoke starts swirling around the edges, and moving almost like liquid, until it creates this sort of vignette around and begins obscuring the image. And then it kind of moves together in that way when something is dropped in the water, like a water drop hits the surface of water and it sort of brings another drop upward. But you're seeing it from this view as it sort of, and a piece of the smoke and shadow separates, and a raven flies out of the mirror into the room with you. And you hear it fly right past you, and it goes into another one of the mirrors. And when it does so, you see this time the view starts with the imagery of this swirling smoke that seems to just sort of flow downward and settle into a light fog as you hear a girl crying. And then you begin to see that the view you see is in a some kind of a small, close, not very tall cave, and you can see several gray and black and white forms of wolves sleeping in this den. And you see a young girl, hard to determine her age, curled up with a small dark-furred wolf pup. And she's just quietly sobbing herself to sleep. Do you say or do anything at this image?
Doc is going to whisper, "The pack is strong because they stay together."
As you say this, again, the smoke coalesces and the raven flies out and into another one of the mirrors. And in this mirror, you see a pair of glowing red eyes. And then you see all around it more eyes start appearing. Sets of glowing eyes. At first in the dozens and then in the hundreds. And then you see a shadow sort of move across. And a lone figure stands there and pulls back a cloak. And looks around, surrounded by all of these glowing eyes. And as they turn, you see all these glowing red eyes reflected in the goggles that this figure, this gray-skinned figure, wears over their eyes. As they turn and they look out the mirror straight at you, and they pull an axe out and look at you. Do you say or do anything?
He's going to look at the goggled figure. And he's going to pause for a second. And he's going to say, "Their jealousy and fear isn't your burden to carry."
The raven flies past and into a fourth mirror. This time, as the raven flies in, you seem to almost be looking through the raven's eyes as this view moves through tree branches across grass. Like, it seems to be in the late evening as it swoops low and hugs close to the ground and then pulls away, and suddenly the ground breaks away and it's looking down into this ravine. There's a waterfall flowing, and it flies across, going over hills and mountains, and eventually moves towards this gathering of lights that seems to grow closer and closer until it's even bigger than any of the Well, it's bigger than Candlekeep. It seems to be a full city of some kind, a walled city. There's many buildings and houses all around, and then a central collection of buildings. And the raven flies in towards, growing ever closer towards a high window in one of these buildings, and it lands, and we see the leaded glass with the crisscross lines across it, and the view sort of moves through the glass as we see a fire burning in a hearth and a leather high-backed, wing-backed chair. And we can just see that there is a figure sitting in this chair. There is a book open on their lap. And then we see a violet hand reach over and turn a page. And there is another figure in the room. They're just to the right of this view that we're seeing, that you're seeing through this mirror. You can sense this figure just standing there, and their voice has an almost ethereal quality to it. As you hear, "Your time in Silvery Moon has come to an end. You are needed in the south. Need you to keep your eyes on them. Watch them. Protect them. Guide them." And the violent hand reaches over and closes the book. And a drow individual stands up and says, "Yes, yes." Do you say or do anything?
Doc is going to take a step forward, and he's going to silently peer through the mirror at the drow, hands gripping the sides of it.
As you do so, you hear immediately to your right, as if whispering in your ear, the same disembodied voice say, "You're not even supposed to be here." And there's an outward pushing against you of this smoke as an entire flock of ravens just all around you. And you feel them, their wings brushing against your face and in your hair, and some of their feathers are falling around you. And they seem to all just swirl around the room for a moment and then all funnel into this last mirror. The mirror you were just looking into, it's just a mirror. You find yourself looking in your reflection. If you look over to this mirror where all the ravens flew into, you see shadow. There's just enough light for you to discern this inky blackness seems to be filling this space on the other side of this mirror. And after a moment, the shadows begin to... They seem as if they're going to part. You can just catch the glimpse of someone. And you hear voices, snippets of phrases. And some of them you recognize, not just the voices, but you've heard these phrases as you hear your new friends. You hear Teera's voice. You hear Assyria and Mizya. You hear Vorn. And you catch snippets, just enough to realize you're catching snippets of your conversations and things that all of you have said. But at the same time, for a moment, you recognize them as things you said when you were inside this extra dimensional space. But you're hearing more conversations. Some of it doesn't make any sense. At some point, people keep talking about a duck. You hear talks of dragons and revolts, and you hear of somebody called the Three Dragon Aunties, but that as soon as you hear that phrase, it just sort of melts away, and it's almost like thoughts rising to the surface, and then as soon as they go away, you almost, like a dream, you can barely remember what they are. But some of these visions and thoughts and things move close to the surface, and you can almost catch a meaning to them. What do you do in front of this mirror?
Doc is going to look into the mirror and he's going to ask a question. And he's going to say, "Why am I here?"
Make an intelligence saving throw.
18.
You feel as these images, these literal smoke and mirrors, are moving around in these rapidly changing shapes. What you catch are bits and pieces of your companions saying things, but it's assembled into coherent phrases, as it's made up of all of their voices and voices you don't recognize, and even voices from earlier in this evening from the people you've met. And what you hear is, "You are at the center of it all."
Okay.
The smoke begins to dissipate, and after a moment, you're just staring at your reflection, and it seems to have a little bit of movement to it, as if you were not looking into a mirror, but you're looking into a reflective liquid surface, as the our viewpoint sort of shifts and kind of pulls away a little bit wider, and we see that this reflection of you is in a mug of dark ale that is sitting on a table. And the camera continues to pan wider and wider, and we see Doc sitting all by himself in the hearth. Nobody else is in there. And as the camera pans wider and wider, showing Doc just sitting there staring into this mug of ale that's sitting in front of him, undrunk, we see the bartender standing near the door, and there's an older looking bronze dragonborn standing there. And the bartender just says, I don't know. It's been sitting like that all night. Hasn't moved a muscle. Gave him the ale hours ago, just in case he wanted it. But nothing. Curious. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I feel as though I've met this man before. Well, I hope to see you at the memorial service. And you hear a bell ring as he turns and walks out the door of the hearth as Hellchrist heads out into the court of open air where they are beginning to set up the stage for the memorial service. That's where we're going to end this interlude.
Well, there you go.
There you go. You got me speechless here. I didn't know what this was going to be when we decided on where we were going to go with it, and I was along for the ride with you. I think we learned a little bit about Doc, maybe less than some might be hoping for, but other interesting revelations.
I think for those who were hoping to learn more about Doc's past, there's more to it than was on the surface. I think there's a lot of who Doc is and where he's been in this interlude more than it seems, especially in the last little bit.
This is, I know you and I've talked about it, and we as players have talked about it. But the character of Doc and Doc within this campaign is interesting, both in terms of just the character you've created, but also in terms of the interaction that you and I have with Doc is as an exercise of trust, and in a way, I don't even know how to describe it. Like I said, I'm at a loss for words. This, I know almost as little as the audience does about Doc, which says a lot about my trust in you as a player and as a friend. But it's fun exploring that, and as somebody who notoriously avoids plot hooks, and in this very campaign attempted to avoid the entire campaign hook in the first session, it's fun to put things in front of you and see how you're going to interact with those things in character. And when we talked about when this session would take place, the time frame, at first I was like, you son of a bitch, look at you avoiding the flashbacks. And we're like, well, I mean, we've played 27 sessions and you're literally flashing back almost 20 sessions. And then I started to think about, well, Doc doesn't sleep. What would it be like as Doc roams around? And you got to meet some interesting people. You don't know who they are. You don't know what their place is. In fact, I would say the only three people you met that you have an idea of who and what they are is the keeper of the Emerald Door, because their job is in their title.
Yeah.
The bartender, again, their job is in their title. And Miriam, this ghost worm, this ghost dragon. But then again, maybe you didn't meet any of them, because we we kind of leave it up to whether or not Doc actually went anywhere in the night. So, yeah, this was a lot of fun, and some intriguing insights into the character of Doc. Hence the title, Man of Mystery. And so, with this interlude, that means there is only one more left, and that is Mizya, Scribe and Scholar, that will be airing next week. Which means in just 2 weeks after you're watching this session, we will be back live with brand new episodes of Scribes and Scrolls, the Candlekeep Mysteries, right here on twitch.tv/miniterrain at 8 p.m. Eastern on Mondays. So we hope you'll tune in for that and join us for the continuing stories of the book club here in Candlekeep and beyond. I want to take a moment to say thank you to everybody in chat. I'm sure we were in chat along with this session, and anybody else that joined us. If you tipped, donated, subscribed, or any of the things, thank you. We do appreciate that, and domain tomes will be awarded when we return live. If you are one of those folks that likes to lurk in the background and not participate in chat, thank you. We appreciate you just as well. And I have to say a huge thank you to all of my players in this campaign who are absolutely amazing, but a special thank you tonight to Gary, without whom this would have just been me talking to myself for a couple hours. So with that, we're going to go ahead and end this interlude the same way we end every stream. And you can say it with me if you want.